You're not going to worry about how much money you had, how much power you had, how much prestige. You're going to see that that was all game, that that was all an illusion. The only thing that's going to matter is the impact you had on other people's lives.
We are all on a separate journey. But the beautiful thing about our life here on this earth is at my funeral, they ain't going to talk about my success. They're going to talk about who Nick was and how Nick lived and how Nick loved and encouraged.
Success is incredibly important, but even more important than success, it's having an impact. It's knowing you haven't walked the planet in vain. It's knowing that because you've been here, you've blessed lives, you've developed people, and you have made the world a better place.
The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Everything you gain in life will rot and fall apart, and all that will be left of you is what was in your heart.
Life is a mirror. And life gives us not what we want. Life gives us who we are. When you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries while you rejoice.
Woo! Man, I long to live life like that, and I believe we're in a community of people here. I believe I'm surrounded by a community of people who long to live life like that. And we've been talking about that for the last, this is the 4th week now. We've been talking about making change for the better. Last week, we got into personal finances and looked at making a significant change through the self-responsibility of our own personal finances. We've been looking at the fact, right, that we are actually most often rich in comparison to the world, and how so many of us have the capacity to live like very few others in the world, and therefore we have the capacity to give like very few others in the world. And when we give like no one else gives, we're able to make the change we want to see in the world. We're actually able to leave the impact we want to have in the world. And remember, we talked about this week 1, but this change is found throughout the entirety of the scripture. In fact, I would say it's one of the main narratives. At the very beginning, Abraham was blessed, and God said, "You're blessed to be a blessing." Jeremiah 7 says it this way: if you really change your ways and your actions and deal with each other justly, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm, then I will let you live in this place in the land I gave your ancestors forever and ever. Isaiah 1 says it this way in verse 16. He says, "Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Instead, learn to do right." And right in which way? Seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Amos 5 says it this way: "For I know how many are your offenses and how great your sins." Well, what sins? And he goes on to tell us there are those who oppress the innocent and take the bribes and deprive the poor of justice in the courts. Instead, he says, hate evil, love good, maintain justice in the courts. He goes on to say, I despise your religious festivals. Your assemblies are a stench to me. Even though you bring me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. Though you bring choice fellowship offerings, I'll have no regard for them. Away with the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps. Instead, let justice roll on like a river. Let righteousness like a never-failing stream. And this concept is throughout the entirety of the Old Testament. And when Jesus shows up, he said it a bunch of ways, and we covered a bunch of different ways in the first week, but it really encapsulates in Matthew chapter 25. He speaks of justice and righteousness like this. He says, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. See, the gospel of Jesus and one of the main narratives within Scripture is righteousness and justice toward others. And if we want to see the kingdom of heaven here on earth, it's this simple. Do right by others. The Old Testament is full of this theme. Jesus said it in the way he lived his life and the words he used, and the early church of the New Testament displayed it as well. In fact, the evidence of the beginning of the early church, the first ecclesias in the name of Jesus, which they called themselves the way. Are you following the way? And the way was like this. In Acts 2 says all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Acts chapter 4, another passage of evidence of what it looked like in the early church, says it this way. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's grace was so powerfully at work in them that there were no needy persons among them. For from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them. They brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. The early church actually saw the kingdom of heaven here on earth as they began to do right by others. It is congruent. It is a massive narrative. It is one of the main narratives within the entirety of Scripture. I believe it's one of the main ways that God ordains or wants us to live our lives, that we would go about doing right by others. And we're talking about making change in this series. And so often the question would be, don't you want to see this change? Don't you want to be a part of a movement like this in your day and in our way? Wouldn't that just reawaken your spirit to what we have the ability to do with our hands and our feet, that we actually do? And we've been saying it like this: we will see the kingdom of heaven displayed in this area when we give to others as a community from the overflow of our self-responsibility. I believe it is the vision from God to every church in America to do right by others. And it's not just that we do it as a bunch of like individual moments, and you go do a couple individual things and I go do a couple individual things. I think that's great. I think there's honor in that, and you can do it that way. But something really extraordinary happens. I would call it supernatural when we decide to pool our resources, when we decide to do it together. Something seismic is available when we do that. Something truly incredible can begin to happen when we actually do it together. I believe that if we want to make a significant change, then we decide right here and right now that we're going to do it together as a community. A bunch of individual self-responsibility comes together, and we pool our resources, and we're actually able to do something really incredible. And I'll tell you this is one of the reasons I came here as a pastor. This is one of the reasons I'm a pastor in 2023. One of the most eventful, greatest times to be a pastor in America. Ha, ha, ha. But the reason I am is because, first and foremost, what I see every Sunday morning we come, and every Sunday morning we try to offer what I believe is God's hope and God's life and God's joy and God's peace for you as individuals, for all of us as individuals. And we see the evidence of this every single Sunday morning. In fact, we just had New Friends Dessert this last week. And at New Friends Dessert, we go around from table to table, and I just kept hearing people say, you have no idea the type, I was so hopeless. And then there has been hope being added into me. You have no idea. I didn't know what I was doing in life, and I feel like there's purpose going on. You have no idea. I was full of chaos, and peace has been added to my life. And testimony after testimony after testimony. We keep hearing those every single week, just about what we get to do right here on Sunday morning. And I hope before God that if you're attending New Life, that every week when you come here, there's some sense of hope, some sense of life, some sense of joy, some sense of peace, some sense of conviction, some sense of challenge, some sense of growing that's going on within you and your relationship with God. That's huge. That's amazing. That's incredible. That's seismic. That's worthwhile. But I do want you to also hear that and hear this from me as a pastor of this community right here. It is my hope that we would also move beyond the Sunday experience as a community. I long to move beyond the Sunday experience as a community. It's amazing all the hope, life, and joy, and peace. I long to see a community that comes here on Sunday and we get filled up, but then we walk outside of these four walls, and we're not just so obsessed with the change that we can get on the inside, but that we take the change that we've received on the inside and we go run outside, because like Jesus said, there's a bunch of people out there that are naked that need to be clothed. There are a bunch of people out there that are hungry that need to be fed. There are a bunch of people out there that are thirsty that need something to drink. There are a bunch of oppressed people. There are a bunch of mistreated people on the outside of these four walls. And for us to come in here and receive some type of hope, life, joy, peace, and just hoard it to ourselves, that's part of our American culture. It's not part of the Christian culture. That we would be something that goes out and has a revolutionary shift, a seismic impact in the world, in the community beyond our four walls. That's my heart. That we would seek out the most needy people within and outside of our four walls, and that we would do justice and righteousness toward them. What would it look like if we as a community got behind it? What would it look like if we did this? I believe it's God's vision for every church in America to do this. But here's the deal at the end of the day. I can't speak for every other church. I know that I'm here right now, and I could speak for us, and I can say that it is certainly our vision here to do that, to go out and find the most needy, both within us and among us and outside of us, and try to do justice and righteousness toward them. And I want to do it here with you. I want to do it here. And I believe this is what's wild about this moment. And I promise you, this is a moment in history, at least in Watertown, New York, at least in New Life Christian Church. Because here's the deal. We are on the precipice. Good news, everybody. We're like right there. Woo! Do you know how much one has to work and how much one has to fight and how much a community has to work to get to the precipice? We've done it. We're right here. We're this close. Oh, we ain't there, but we're this close. And I know the answers. It will require generosity, and it will require us doing it together. And if we get generous together, you want to make change? I didn't know that moved like that. I thought that was a flat screen. I thought that was like a wall. Joel's going to tell me afterward, don't hit that again. It will require generosity. We have to do it together. Because here's the deal about generosity. Here's the deal about an individual who decides to be generous. My 10% of generosity only goes so far. And some of you might be going, what's 10%? 10% is known as a tenth of your income. It's referred to in Scripture as a tithe. It literally means a tenth of one's income, and it's a biblical and it's a universal concept of how much one could give of their income. And we'll come back to more of that next week, but this is how it looks. I'm going to break it down for us. My whole household income is $80,000. So a tenth, right, math people, a tenth of that is $8,000. That's how much a tithe is for me to give to the church. That's what I'll be giving to the church this year, $8,000 of my whole household income. So a good question we should ask, right, is, well, what does that $8,000 do? Great question. I'm glad you asked it, right? That was what you were asking. Well, firstly, we have this building you're sitting in. You're sitting, I'm standing. We have this building we're all sitting in, full of chairs. It's got walls. It's got AC. Sometimes it's got heat when we like it to, hopefully sometimes. It's got a little bit of a leaky roof, but, for the most part, we're not getting rained on for the most part in here, right? Depends if you sit like right around here. You might. That's why we removed the chairs there, okay? All right, strategic. It looks good too, but no, not really. Okay. We have mortgage building, right? We have building expenses, we have operations, and we have various ministry budgets that help pull off the Sunday morning. All the hope, all the life, all the joy, all the peace we just talked about, it doesn't just happen. We work for it and we pay for it. So here's the total. Mortgage, operations, and ministry budgets all together equals $280,000. Right? Like it shows up there, this includes mortgage, it includes operations, it includes utilities. That figure includes insurance, includes all the things like snow removal, all the maintenance to keep the building going. It also covers, next slide, it also covers kids ministry and everything that happens in kids ministry. All the things that you see get done and come out of kids ministry. It covers growth track. It covers small groups, the opportunity for community, which we love around here, right? We love to provide opportunity for community. It involves worship. I mean, some of you think that this keyboard is just magically for free. These things just come off the side of the road. We just drive by and all this equipment shows up for us. Just kidding. We pay for it. This has to get paid for. The speakers you're hearing me talk, this microphone, it got paid for, right? So it pays for these things. It covers production. It covers first impressions. It covers cafe. It covers velocity. And if that's not enough, it also includes events like Spring Fest, Fall Fest, and other special Sunday services as well. In other words, that $280,000 might sound big. The majority of that actually does go to just to pay off the building loan in itself and the insurance that it costs to do that. Majority of it does that. But we have spread the butter really thin on this piece of bread. And I mean, it'd be nice to put a little bit more butter on there if we could, but I get, right? The money, that amount for some of us is a big deal. Now, on top of that, we also have to have a couple workers that are designated to make sure that this keeps going, right? We have around 6 full-time paid staff members. We have four full-time and a handful of part-time and support members that equal up to 2 other full-time paid positions. Now, again, that includes our admins, includes our pastors, our maintenance workers. On average, it's between 6 full-time paid staffers. On average, between 6 full-time paid staffers, we average out at $54,333 a year. Not yet. You're killing it, though. $54,333 a year. That number is all inclusive. All right? That means that's before tithe, that's before taxes, that doesn't include medical insurance. In other words, there are no benefits. That's it. That's what you get. Good luck, okay? And here's the deal, because some of y'all are starting to get a little squeamy. What is this about? Let me help you with it. What this is not about. We are not here to ask for more monies for ourselves. That's not what this is about. We don't need it. In fact, you might look at that figure, and if you've calculated even median income or household income like we have been the last couple weeks, you might go, y'all need a little bit more to live. No, we all have either other various incomes, or we have a spouse that's also working. Like, we're actually pretty set. We're not here asking for more. I also would not go to them and ask for less. Hey, do it for less. Thank you, Chip. The end point with this is we're good here. We're just trying to be transparent with where these monies are going. Here's our current staff. There you go. Put their slides up. There you go. Go ahead. Put it up. There you go. Look at these beautiful faces. Look at that. Yeah. You know, this is Jeff Paquette, previous to the hair growing out and the mustache. Look at his baby face. Look at how beautiful. Look at how pretty he is. Like, look at that. Big old man-child up there. Okay, anyway. The picture doesn't include some of our kids' minister support or our per-hour maintenance worker. And all of the staff compensation for everybody you see here, it equals out to this. Total compensation equals $326,000. So again, that's $54,000 for 6 paid full-time. It's $326,000 for all those people. That spreads out. If you want to do the math, do the math. So what we have here at the end of the day is that we have $326,000 for compensation, and we have the $280,000 for all the other expenses we've covered, and that totals out to $606,000. That's the total. Again, that pays staff. It maintains the building, any and all payments for the building. It runs our Sunday mornings, all the hope, all the life, all the joy, all the peace. It provides opportunity for community through small groups and all these other various ministries we continue to host and hold. Pretty much everything you see and get from New Life is covered by that number right there, $606,000. And you might be saying, that's a lot of money. Well, if you're an organizational guru and you know how much things actually cost and how much other churches spend, you actually know that that's a really amazing number that we've gotten to, and we have spread the butter really thin and done incredible things with it. But if you're not and you don't know anything or don't know where church monies come from, or this is the first time you've ever heard people pull the hood back from church monies, you're like, wow, that looks like a lot. And you'd be right, especially if you're only looking at my $8,000. My $8,000 just did a magic trick and disappeared in that. Right? Like, so what did you pay for, Pastor Joseph? The front row of chairs? The toilet paper? Like, good job. What, you want us to give you a round of applause? It really goes by so quick, right? And you might, well, then what's the point? Like, what does this even go to? It just disappears so quick. But remember this. Remember what we've been talking about. The last couple of weeks, we actually walked into what's the average household income in the area. The average household income is $74,606. The average, then we looked at the median income. The median income is $58,271. And we have around 220 families. I'm just one of them. We have around 220 families attending New Life right now. Do you know what that means? If we took the average household income and everyone decided to give just a tithe, just 10%, that would be $7,460 per year times 220 families. Do you know the results? $1,641,200. Woo! Yes, let's go. Look at that. Now $606,000 is the small number. But I knew you guys weren't going to have that reaction. So just for fun, let's take the lower amount, because you're like, you use the high number. That's cheating. Okay, cool. Let's not use the high number. Rather than look at the average household, let's look at the median. If we took the median income and everyone decided to give a tithe, that would be $5,280 per year times 220 families. And you know what that equals? $1,280,400. You want to know what it would look like if we as a community actually decided to pool our resources and do it together? You can see that figure, $1,280,400. You want to know what it would do? We'd be able to make change. It wouldn't be a question. Let me help us. It's not a question. And I already said, we're on the precipice. If you're hearing what I'm spelling out, it means we're right here. But we're not able to actually make real seismic change beyond the Sunday. And we talk about it and we watch the videos and we get juiced up over it. We feel these goosebumps and we get all warm fuzzies inside. But then when it comes time, it's like, here's the moment right here. We can make real change. We can actually bring change to the world. And all it would take is if we all just gave our tithe. Not only would we be able to keep running Sunday mornings at a high level and offer hope and offer life and offer joy and offer peace and all that, but no. We'd be able to go out into the world, and that's the vision, right? Is that we have a dream to receive what you give and to give the remaining. Actually, it's a vision called 70-30, that we would be able to, off of the 70%, offer everything we're doing on Sunday mornings and everything I've showed you thus far, but then take this additional 30 and go give it away to those who are further in need. Do you want to see that picture? Because I want to help, I want to show us the picture today, to show us what it would look like if we just took the 30% of our median income number that we just pulled, what it would look like if we used the 30% of the overall median tithe. 30% of the tithe from our median income equals $384,582 and 3 exclamation points. $384,582 and 3 exclamation points. Could you imagine what we could do with it? Could you imagine the change we could do? Here's the vision we have to give it out in 3 different ways. It starts like this. It starts with number 1, in-house giving. What's in-house giving? You are in the house. Thank you. It's in-house giving. In-house giving comes right back to the people in our community. And I don't know if you, maybe you are the person who's in need, or maybe you could just snap your head to your left and snap your head to your right and do the scariest thing in America and look to your left and right and look at people in their face, not at your phone, but look at them. Some of us actually show up here and we're in need. And we could actually do something about the people who show up here every week and are in need. In fact, if you take that 384,000 figure and you divide it by 3, because I said there was 3 categories we'd like to give, guess what you have? You have $128,194 to give to those in need who are right in our seats, who are right amongst you right now. Wouldn't you love to give to them? So excited, aren't we? I'm about to get petty real quick. Wouldn't you love to give to them? Wouldn't you love to make a change in someone's life who might be sitting right next to you? Did you know that we already do this in ways when we can? In fact, just in October, if you didn't know this, just in October, we had a widow who was attending our church, and her roof caved in, and she had no way of repairing the roof. And so do you know who stepped in? Our church, you, from your tithe, gave $5,000, and we put a brand new roof on a widow's home. That happened. If I wanted to do that for a widow, it would take my whole money. It would take the whole tithe. If you want to do that, when was the last time you put a roof on a widow's house? On your own, as an individual. But together we were able to do it, and we just kept moving. We just kept trucking. Barely anyone blinked an eye. We tried to tell the story mid-Sunday, and everyone's like, cool, next. We did it again. There was an older lady who reached out to us that came to the church for a long time, and her car broke down, and she reached out and said, I have no way of fixing this car. I have no way of getting transportation. I need to get here, and here for basic necessities and needs. We sent her a $1,200 check, and she got her car fixed. Yeah. When was the last time you just did that on your, when was the last time you were walking around, saw a need, was like, oh, here's $1,500. I don't know. Maybe you have that capability. I barely have that capability. And if I did, I get to do that 3 times and then I'm done. 4 times. Math wasn't my specialty. This is what it's about. And you're right. Some of you go, well, you'll never be able to fill every need in the room, right? But not helping with some because you can't help with all is honestly mostly just an excuse from wicked people. And 128,194 will certainly help more than just a couple. Not by $8,000. It can't come close to touching the impact that $128,194 impacts. But when we all do a little, it impacts a lot. And that's just one of 3 areas we want to impact. The second one is this. We can find local organizations that are already winning and already serving the community, and we can partner with them in local giving. And you know what we get? Local giving. And you know what we get to give to them? $128,194. That's divided by 3, right? We get to give them that. And we're able to do this on smaller scales currently. But did you know that we've already had sit-downs with local organizations of how we could partner with them even further? And do you know the number one reason, according to Credo right now, that the number one reason for relapse in our community? Do you know the answer? Transportation. That's the number one fault they're finding right now in their process and in their system. They can't get people transportation, so they come out of rehab, and oftentimes they get them lined up with jobs, and they'll get a job, but then they can't get to the job. And how many employers love when someone can't show up for the job? So how long does that last? They'll try to bum rides, they'll try to walk, they'll try to ride bikes, they'll try to do whatever they can, but eventually they show up late too many times, or they just can't get to their shift on time, and then eventually they get fired, and then by the time they get to that point, their quickest way back to really their necessities, which is I still need to eat, I still need to get clothes, I need some basic necessities, is to get back into the game of which they came, and then boom, that's their entryway back into their old life, into their old patterns. Do you know what Cradle told us when we sat down? We said, well, what would you need in order to get that? They said, we really just need to hire a transportation director because that would really fix it for us. Well, how much would you need to do that? Probably around $30,000 to $35,000. Okay, and where's the government's already gives us certain grants, and they won't give us a grant for that. So who could step in and ring that bell? Who could answer that one? We could. We actually could. We could help people coming out of rehab in our community get back on their feet by partnering with a local cause. And here's the beauty of it. That's just one. That's one. We still have, if you're doing math, 128,194, and we give Cradle 30,000. We still have $98,194 left. And there's still a bunch of organizations like Urban Mission, like Salvation Army, and like a bunch of others locally that are killing it and helping serve the lowest of the low in our area, or the most down and out, or the most marginalized, or the most oppressed. And they're helping them, and we could actually come in and we could literally help tilt the scales for the better in local organizations. We can do that together. We can actually leave a seismic impact locally, not just in-house, which we can do. We can also do it locally. But it's got to be all of us, not just a few of us, because my $8,000 doesn't even help cover the first one. Somebody hear me this morning. And that's 2 out of 3. There's still a third one. We still have $128,194 left, and we'd love to give it to global giving. Globally. There are some really amazing global causes that we can partner with, and we're still looking at which ones that we can really get in partner with and really get married to. But a couple that we're passionate about is this idea, I don't know if you ever heard it, it's an idea called Adopt a Village. And you take a village in one of the most developing nations on earth, and you get in there and you adopt that village, and you watch. If you watch over the course of 3 years and 5 years and 7 years and 10 years, and a small or a mid-sized church in northern New York. I'm like, local New York? Local New York? Why am I saying local New York? Don't say local New York. That doesn't make sense. In northern New York, actually begins to adopt this village, and we begin to help it. We begin to help it build schools that leads towards education. We begin to help it with health development so that they can get better health. We begin to help it with financially host a whole entire village, and that village can actually be transformed. And we're not the only crazies to do this. There are other churches that have started to do this, but we could actually step in and also do this. We could have a massive shift in a village across the world, or across the ocean, or across the sea, or in Central America somewhere. We could adopt that village, and we could watch as it changes over the years because of your giving. Another one is Convoy of Hope. Convoy of Hope is basically boots on the ground no matter what natural disaster or tragedy strikes worldwide. No matter what. When the hurricane hit in Florida, they were there before just about anyone else showed up. When the war in Ukraine first started, they were the first shelter set up right past the border. So as literal refugees were fleeing across the border, they were the first ones to offer them food and shelter and basic necessities, clean drinking water, things of that sort. Any war you ever hear of, any natural tragedy, natural disaster that ever happens, Convoy of Hope is some of the first people boots on the ground. And we could give a chunk of our money and go, we want to be represented there. We want to be a part of people who are literally fleeing for their lives in real world. Another one I'm very passionate about, and we're passionate about, is an anti-sex trafficking cause. I don't know if you know about this, but sex trafficking right now is around 4.8 million people worldwide. 99% of those people are women and children. You want to talk about widows and orphans? You want to talk about the most disadvantaged? This is probably it in our world today. It's the highest. Human trafficking as a whole, that includes labor and sex trafficking, is 25 million people worldwide. This is the grossest, highest number recorded for human slavery at any one point in time. We're in the middle of it. And we could do something about it. We could have an impact here. We could have an incredible impact here. And I'm going to tell you a story in a minute, but if you would remember the figure around 5 million, and what would it look like if what would it look like if we saved even 1,000 of these people from the grips of hell? What would it look like? What could that be like? Well, 1,000, what's that in comparison to 5 million? It might not matter to the 5 million, but I guarantee you it matters to the 1,000. And we could do that. But here's the overall deal. At the end of the day, you're right. My $8,000 doesn't do it. My $8,000 disappears really quick. It probably doesn't make that seismic of a change. But if we all buy in, if we all do it, there's no other option. We will clothe the naked. We will feed the hungry. We will give drink to the thirsty. We will see as the captive is free. We will speak justice. We will. There's not a question mark. There isn't a question mark as to what we can do. There isn't a question mark as to whether or not we can make change. The numbers don't lie. They're right here, and they're way better than I even thought they were. Do you know what it comes down to? $15.96 a day. That's a 10% of our median income in the room right now. $15.96 a day. What is that, 2 Starbucks now? Barely joking. It's a lunch at Panera. It's a bottle of wine on the way home. That's what it takes. That's what it takes to make the change. It's $112 a week. It's $5,827 a year. That's based on 10% of the median income in this room. And here's the deal. If you can afford more, or your 10% is more, please do more. And if you can't do that much money, if you can do less, if you can only do less, then do less. Do your part. That's what it is about. If and when we all give our part, I promise you we have the ability to leave a seismic impact in this room, in our local community, and to the world at large. It's not a guessing game anymore. It's right here. And that's our heartbeat in it. That's my heartbeat in it. That's why I'm here. I had cushy cozy. I had that life. I lived in Florida. I had a pool and a lanai in my backyard at age 29. I made it in America. I did it. And I had job opportunity and increase and raises, and my life was made, and I could have retired and drifted away into the American sunset at age 30. I promise you that was real for me. I promise you it was a real decision for me. I promise you I wasn't blinded when I came here. I came here because I saw an opportunity to do Sunday mornings where people could come and receive hope, life, joy, and peace. But then I saw a community that was ready, that was on the precipice of stepping out and actually doing right by others, actually being able to clothe the naked, actually being able to feed the hungry, actually being able to do it. And so here we are a year later, and the question is, will we do it? And if you want this, and I know I want this, it's this simple. I promise you, it comes down to this. Give to it. Give to it. And we have it. You want to make change? We want to make change. You want to make change? Give to it. If you want Sunday mornings to continue, give to it. If you want in-house giving to happen, you care about your neighbor, you care about the person sitting next to you, you care about the person as they walk in the room and you could see, wow, that person's probably in a little bit of need. If you want to be able to give to them, give to it. If you want local giving and you want to see a shift happen locally or the ability for us to at least propel it forward, give to it. If you want to see global giving and you want to start to talk about and go into a bunch of different facets, but really streamline a couple of these things and potentially help at least a couple thousand or 1,000 or 2,000 people who are in bondage and imprisoned and enslaved in today's culture and world, give to it. If you value what you're getting here and want to leave an impact in the world, you can. But we all are going to have to buy in and give to it. When you sit down, we talked about financial, personal self-responsibility, making a financial plan. When you sit down and make your financial plan, don't neglect us. Put in 10%. If you can't put in 10%, put in 8%, put in 7%, but include us in your giving. Be a part of this movement. And I'm going to tell you how. I'm actually going to stop and pause. We're going to go into the detail just for a minute. Why? Because at the end of the day, if we don't talk about the detail, then none of this matters. We just get juiced up and we feel something really nice and we're like, yeah, and nothing will change. But if we actually want something to actually change, here's how the real change begins right here. Every Sunday would tell you that there are ways that you can give to and through this church and the overall movement that we're discussing here today. And the best option for us to get as much change out of your giving is to go to the Church Center app or go to newlifenny.com and you can hit the big click to give now button if you're online. If you're on the Church Center app, there's a button called Give right at the bottom in the middle somewhere at the center, I think. Click to Give Now button. When you click that, you're going to see a page pop up. Here's the page. That's what you're going to see. Now, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, which I do because it really matters, when you hit that frequency button, click that frequency button and set it to regular. When you set it to regular, you're going to see options come up. You can set it weekly, you can set it every other week or monthly based on what you can give. And then, lastly, the best option again for us is to do this. Lastly, at the end of the bottom of that page, you're going to see that little button right there. Add to your banking account. Add your bank account. And I'll tell you why, because this one people go, well, why do you do the bank account? I'll tell you why. It's a pretty big reason. Because otherwise we have to pay a 3% processing fee for every bit of giving. And last year alone, we paid over $15,000 in processing fees. That's a large chunk. $15,000 is half of what we could give to Credo. $15,000 is a big chunk for us. The more people we can get set up with recurring giving via your bank account, the more you're actually able to give, and the more consistency we're able to have as we help more people. And this is what this is about. This is what this is about. I promise you, I'm looking to help more people here because this is fun to talk about, making change. And the videos are inspirational, and they make me feel something too. And I like the feeling of making change. I like the feeling of being inspired by making change. But at the end of the day, if we just talk about it, but nobody signs up, then we're not going to make the change that we all say we want to make. It's just that true. There's no way we'll be able to. We won't have the ability. We won't have the power. And just so you know, just so you're aware, because maybe it's important to notate, because no, it actually makes sense because churches at times have bungled it, right? But I just want you to know, this isn't for me. I don't get anything out of this. I'm not getting a pay raise out of this. I already have. I have 2 paid off cars. I'm not looking for another car. I don't need you to help me pay off my cars. I'm fine. I have a budget. I have a financial plan. We're good. We're set. Also, as far as church goes, church is after your money. Well, let me tell you this. I've been here for a year, and this is the first message I've ever had about money. A year. I'll tell you why. Because it's not about taking something from you. It's about all collectively coming together and giving something to the world at large. That's what it is for me. That's what it's about. At the end of the day, though, this is what I know. It's a truth that I know. It's a reason I still buy into the beauty of community through the local church. It's because one light alone is enough light for one, maybe two people. But a bunch of lights together, all combined, can light up an entire room. During World War II, there was over 6 million Jewish people were killed during the Holocaust. I don't know if you know this, but 1.5 million, 1.5 million of those 6 million were children. Those numbers, we can't even wrap our heads around them. And if you were to say, if I was to give you the number 2,000 after telling you 6 million, 2,000 pales in comparison to 6 million. What is even the difference? Well, thankfully, to a bunch of Jewish children, a lady named Aunt Truist didn't think that way. Aunt Truist was a lady that lived during the World War II, and she decided to take her time and use her resources and use her energy, and she developed an organization called the Kinder Transport. And the Kinder Transport was all about saving kids' lives who were on their way to the concentration camps. In fact, she would barter, she would negotiate, she would bribe Nazi soldiers just to get one child at a time. And she did it successfully, one at a time, 2 by 2, 3 by 3. Oftentimes, she would be taking handfuls of Jewish children, and she'd be getting them across the border. Handfuls of Jewish children and getting them across dangerous borders to get them into safety. And she did it one by one by one. You put the camera over here. Put the camera right here. Yeah, right there. Thank you. Good job. I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and my mind just couldn't do it. I'm sorry, y'all. She did it one by one by one by one by one. Do you know the power of Aunt Truist? Do you know how many lives she saved? A couple thousand. We just talked about, well, what's 2,000 in spite of 6 million? Well, there's 5 million sex trafficked. What if our church only does 1,000? Again, it matters to that 1,000, doesn't it? It matters to the 2,000. But you want to know something even more impactful? There was way more than a couple thousand people saved during the Holocaust. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Jews were saved. Do you want to know why? Because Aunt Truist was just one of a bunch. There was a collective group of people that all put themselves in harm's way to try to save the most down and out in their day. A collective. And you know what they call that collective? Do you know they actually have a name for it now? The Jewish people, the state of Israel has actually set up a place. It's called the Righteous Among the Nations. And there's a garden there. I was just here 3 months ago. We visited this. And each one of these people who saved, people like Aunt Truist and thousands of others, have now their name inscribed in stone. A lot of them have trees or plants that have been planted in their honor as the idea of non-Jewish people who risked their lives for Jewish people in this time. It's the garden of the righteous among the nations. And that number now equates to over 20,000 people. It's one of a collective. Aunt Truist was one of many. It didn't take one. It didn't take just two. 20,000 plus people that left a seismic impact in their day and in their way. In the worst thing that they could see, and they dove into it. And I'll never forget, we stood at the entrance of that avenue. We stood at the entrance of that, and our Jewish guide began to say, and he said, in every world tragedy, there's 3 types of people. There's the people shooting, there's the people being shot at, and there's the bystander. And he said, if you're neither of the former, you're not the one shooting and you're not the ones being shot at, then the only question you have to ask yourself is, what type of bystander will you be? And then he said, when the knock for help comes to your door, how will you answer? They might not be able to knock right now. So I'm knocking for them. Here's the knock. Wake up. We can do it. We can make the change. And I love that they call them the righteous among the nations, because we've talked about what that word really means scripturally. Tzedakah. These people are righteous. It didn't take one righteous person. It wasn't about two righteous people. It was about a collective of righteous people that made a difference. I'm here to tell us that we could be a collective of righteous people that could make a real difference in our world, both in-house, both locally, and both globally. It's not a pipe dream. It's not a fantasy. It could actually happen, and the numbers are showing it. More than ever before, I've believed in this vision. More than ever before, I've believed in this mission. More than ever before, I believe that this is what God wanted the ecclesia, the local church, to represent. More than ever before, this is available and it's attainable. But the question we must ask ourselves is, when the knock for help comes on our door, will we answer it? Will we be righteousness and justice toward others? Will we actually care about the cries of a generation that may be across a pond, but they're still in our planet? They're still in our world. Will we actually go out and clothe the naked? Will we actually go out and feed the hungry? Or will we just keep pipe dreaming it away? We can make a change. We can do it. It's available. It's attainable. What will it be? What will it be? It's up to you. It's up to you. It is up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you. And if a bunch of us say yes, and each do our individual part collectively, my hope, my prayer is that in the months to come, we'll be telling so many life stories, so many changes, so many shifts, that every Sunday it's like we won't even be able to keep up with it. And that's a true, genuine thing that could happen from this moment. Let's do it. Let's do this. Let's actually do it. Let's do it with clarity in our eyes. Let's do it with fervor in our hearts. I pray that your spirit is reawakened this morning, because the ability that our hands and feet have as a collective is so much more than so often what we've been told. We can do it. We can make the change. We can make the change that matters. It's just up to us. God, I thank you for this moment. I thank you that you've given us the ability and the presence of mind to see it right here, right now. I pray that we would do what's not impossible, but what is supernatural. I pray that you'd lead us in every step of the way. I pray that every single one of the 220 families represented would buy in. We would actually care